Welcome to another episode of the Cyber Culture Cafe podcast, where John and Andy will introduce you to another fascinating member of the eSentire family. Welcome, Grady, to the podcast. Please give us a brief introduction of where you are within the company now and your current roles and responsibilities, and we'll start from there.
I'm the business development director for eSentire. I'm responsible for kind of the overlay with all the channels and the partners and the relationships. Make sure we're all talking together and working together as a tight ecosystem. So focus on our clients.
Pretty broad.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the thing is, I'm engaging with all of the channels team in the field, with our distribution relationships, even working a little with the clients and regions. My background is I was a CISO in my previous life, and CIO and stuff like that. So I've been kind of connecting the dots, but also helping get feedback to the organization on needs and things that are going on, and it's pretty broad. I work very closely with the channels and the partners and distribution on what are the parts of the ecosystems that we haven't touched, and how we can kind of bring things in line, and kind of make sure we're all on the same page, communicating across the board. So.
That's awesome. So a CISO in your previous life. So how long, let me ask you this, how long have you been doing, computers, cybersecurity, IT? I mean,
Well,
probably as long as me.
yeah, it's been a while. I mean, my life in the security industry, I guess, I started in the military. So I started physical security. I was in special operations and stuff like that for the U.S. Marine Corps. So did a lot of more physical stuff than other things. I've been to every country but one. Been to all the continents, thanks to good old military days. And then one day I was up in Boston, getting out of active duty, and bumped into some guys at MIT, and started working at a e-commerce company. But security has always been my focus. So
Hmm.
I bounced between CIO, CISO, VP of product, and then VP of channels. I built global channels for security companies around AI, deep learning, machine learning, and always been dipping the toes into security. Uh, cyber boards for colleges and universities around cybersecurity, the importance of it. So
So what years were you in the military?
I was from active duty. First time was 90 to 96, and then some more pullback here and there, at least 20.
Hmm. Nice. Wow. Holy cow. Yeah, I went in I was in the Navy. I went in 89 to 92, and then I got out. I went to the Navy, I got money for school, which I didn't even use the money for school, but it was an amazing experience for sure. It was all over the world. Well, I shouldn't say all over the world. I didn't get to go to Europe, which was kind of depressing, but I was all over the West Side. I mean, Singapore, Hong Kong, Thailand, Philippines. I mean, Korea. It was amazing being in some of those other countries and some of that experiences. So that was a lot of fun. Very unique.
Oh yeah, it broadens your world to you. I mean, I grew up in the mountains of Georgia in a little farm community, and it was either go cut wood or go to college. And if all you have an option to cut wood, you can't afford college. Yeah, it's lucky enough to go in the military, and I was very lucky to be able to see a lot of great things and
Yeah.
open doors. Yeah, and got to go to college because of the military.
Hmm.
Opened a lot of things for me.
So
So
did you always want to get involved? I know you said you always were passionate about security, but did you always want to do, this kind of field? Is this what you intended to do before you even got
absolutely
started?
not. Well, I didn't even really know what this field was. Honestly, my plan was to go work for the State Department and work
Huh?
overseas. I've always been very good at bringing people to the table, depending on whatever's going on, and getting them to work together and figure out the issue. So that's where I was going to go. And honestly, if it wasn't for moving to Boston and bumping into some technology people, I ended up getting into a role where I was working with a lot of IT, and you can't lead a team unless you lead by example. So I literally sit down, learn network infrastructure, learn this new thing called Java. I'm teaching programming, but so we started doing that. We're looking at Java structures. We were thinking security before everybody else honestly was. So yeah, that's how I ended up putting Fold in and have not left it yet. Just bounce between the technical and the business development sales side of the house.
All right. You remind me of a Secret Service agent. Like, I can see you being a Secret Service agent. I was watching on TV not too long ago. I don't know if you've ever seen those movies where it was like Olympus Has Fallen. It was with what's his name? Gerald. I forgot his name.
Butler.
Yeah, Jared Butler, right. You remind me of Jared Butler. I gotta tell you, I can see you being Secret Service and all those in those movies and stuff. I don't know, it's just funny when you're talking. I'm thinking, wow, you look just like him for some reason. I think that's what I'm thinking of in my head. So
Well,
that is a
that was my
compliment.
plan. No. That was my plan, was to go that direction. And got the technology bug, and just started working very closely, and all of that. I was part of a company that did like MSSP services for the service for anybody else knew what that was.
Yeah.
The .com days, we were already in data centers. People were moving the data centers, and getting this thing called HP OpenView and Remedy to actually work together and create reports and all
that stuff. Yes. %. Wow. Unbelievable. Huh. That's awesome. So you've been here at eSentire how long? How
a beautiful 1 month and 2 weeks.
Oh,
so
wow.
I am.
It seems like you've been here for a long time. I mean, forever. I can't remember when you weren't here. That's funny.
Yeah. I was talking to some of our executives who are like, "Grady, you're doing this, this, and this, and this," and I'm like, "Well, for me to do this piece, I need to be part of this, this, and this."
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah. Huh.
Do you feel, Grady, that you lean into that sort of physical security aspects, or at least strategy, to address these more sort of digital challenges?
Well, yeah. I mean, I look at it on, I was trained of, look at the perimeter, look at how to infiltrate, how to get inside, to take vulnerabilities, observe and watch, like all this stuff I was taught in, the military and other stuff I do. I mean, I did, like I was saying, when I first started in e-commerce and other stuff, I was always already thinking about, okay, how are people getting in here and do what they're not supposed to? Because my mind's already there. So, um, and hope that noise doesn't bother everybody in the background. But going through the different angles of it, yes. I mean, I look at everything as a security. Even my house, I look at everything as security. So
right. Yeah. You probably have your whole house all wired up too. I bet you're all live.
Well, just say my brothers, all my brothers are prior military, but they're like, "Grady, you're a little over the top." So,
so you're not like off the grid, right? Like nobody can find you.
I wish. I'm a North Georgia hillbilly. One of the things the military did for me is I have a knack for languages, so they sent me to speech therapy. So you can't speak Farsi with a Southern drawl. My wife is a city kid. I married her she's from Latin America. With no sidewalks, she's confused. So I live in the woods, but she won't let me go too far into the woods. So I would love to be off the grid, but I am what I am. So
nice. So you did mention you have two daughters?
Yes, 2 teenage daughters.
2 teenage daughters. So when you say teenage, like how old?
I'm talking about like 15 and 19.
Brutal.
Oh, it is. And the thing is, I'm from a very military male-dominated family, so I have no idea what I'm doing. So
my
wife says they're pushing me around, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do here.
Yeah, it's tough. I this is me personally. I got to tell you, we have a whole blended family here, so we have 5 technically all together, and it is the girls are harder than boys. I mean, listen, the boys drive you crazy. Don't get me wrong; they do stupid shit all the time.
Yeah. Well, boys is about keeping them alive.
Exactly. They'll push the boundaries because they're not smart in the head, but the girls are, they are tough.
Well, you sprinkle a little bit. My wife's background is she's a psychiatrist background. People like that. She used to introduce me as the case study. So yeah.
The case study. There you go.
I think kids are difficult. I think kids are difficult. Full stop.
Oh yeah. Oof. Brutal.
So
So you said you met your wife is from where?
She's in Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico. So how did you meet your wife? Was you meet your wife when when you were in the military?
Yeah, I was stationed in Puerto Rico. I was part of
Cool.
a group that ran security for Latin America. So
Nice. That's awesome. Huh. And now you got two teenage girls. So they're the ones graduated high school, yes?
yeah, one's graduated high school. The other one is on the verge. They're all, yeah, they're definitely moving along. So
Yeah, I bet. I bet. Did they have any idea what they want to do?
nah, I mean the oldest was wants to follow her mother's footprints, but at the same time, she's done a little modeling and stuff like that. We'll see
Oh,
how that all plays out.
nice. There you go. That's I would listen, if you can do modeling and you can get makes a lot of money doing that, I'd do it too. Because let me tell you, why not? Why not? You know? Do it, do that. That's what I would do. I don't want to work for a living if I don't have to. I wish I was rich, but then again, if I was
Well,
rich,
John, you spend your life talking for a living, like the rest of us do.
that's true.
That's not work.
Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah,
can, yeah, I mean that's not too bad.
it is
So
true. No, I love what we do. We have a lot of fun what we do. I look at my my wife being a customer success manager, and she's talking all day long and dealing with customers. She's like, oh, sometimes it's so difficult because you've got to make people happy. When they're not happy, you cannot you can't let the emotions get the best of you. And it's difficult. For me, I don't think I can do it. I'd be like, look, let me just tell you something. Relax. You're blowing a gasket here. It's not that bad. But like you can't do that, right? You gotta really be professional and you have to calm the folks down and let them know. And she's great at that because, and this is for me, I told this story once before. It was it was Christmas Day. And one of my stepkids, they were the youngest one. At the time, he was younger. Christmas Day, running around and bangs his head, gets a cut on his head, stitches. He's going to need stitches on Christmas Day. So right away, I'm freaking out. And my wife is just holding his head nice and calm, talking calmly while she's on the phone with the plastic surgeon. She calls the plastic surgeon, hey, I'd like you to come in today. We have a little situation. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like freaking out. And she's just like calm and relaxed and controlling the situation. Where me, I'd be like, you effing kids, what the hell is wrong with you guys? What is wrong with you? Why would you do what you're doing? Why don't you, I mean, come on. And the boys, like you said, keeping them alive is the key for the love of God. You're not kidding. It's not easy. It's not easy because they're just not, they do stupid things all the time.
absolutely.
And I was, doing stupid things too when I was a kid. I'm surprised I'm still alive, but
Well,
the
it's the whole
girls
thing
were,
of being a kid, right? I mean, you think
yeah,
you're indestructible until you realize that you're not.
unfortunately, it takes a long time to get to that place where you're like, I
It
probably shouldn't have
depends
did
how
that.
reckless you are.
Yeah,
I was on first name terms with A&E at the local hospital for a long time. It's just like, because I'd be in there every other week.
yeah. Oh, so I know there's a lot of things you do at eSentire. I mean, it's a whole role that was built and created, and there's just so much stuff going on. What do you do to unwind? What do you do after work? Do you like, I gotta relax because I'm gonna, too
Well,
much
that's
going
good.
on.
That's a good question. I mean, I guess the big thing for me is kind of to go, walking, hiking.
Mm.
I also do write. I do some writing. I've written
Oh,
a couple of books. And I'm a big history nut, so I love doing research. I love traveling. So if I have a
mm.
chance to go somewhere, just my wife loves the beaches. I could just go walk and see old buildings and kind of the history.
Yeah.
I'm a
I
happy.
like I like the history stuff. I think the history stuff.
Any particular history, Grady? Any particular time frame or?
Well, I mean, not really. I mean, I guess conflict history. That's pretty much all history.
Yeah. Okay.
But no, I mean, like I grew up in, like I said, in the South, so I grew up very much about American history, Civil War history,
Mm.
and then my father was a World War II and Korea veteran. It was in the Pacific. My uncles were in Europe, so I
Mm.
like to travel out and to see those. But I am also a big like ancient history person, so I like the read the history of the old Roman Byzantine empires. I
Yeah.
also do kind of I like the cultural overlays because what I mean by that is I used to train troops in the military and other places. So when you go into an area, you understand their history and their culture as you're being to teach them properly. So I just got in the habit every time I go somewhere, I would definitely read a lot about the history because the history affects the culture, and then the culture you can see kind of all the other tie-ins.
Hmm.
So I'm all over the place. Is pretty much what I'm saying, but I like Greek history, Roman. I'm of Scottish and Irish descent, so I like Celtic history. I read a lot about that, and as well as European history across the board, Chinese history as well. Kind of the different dynasties, even Japan, the whole Shogun time period.
Oh,
And,
that's cool.
uh, yeah,
Yeah.
Latin America.
Any particular one that stands out for you? If you had the option, say for example, you just won the lottery, where would you go and spend time doing research to just
I
dig
would.
into something you're curious about?
It's a hard call. I guess I would like to do southern Spain, like doing the borderlines of the Moorish kind of settlement, but also and the whole southern Spain and France. There's some old history there of the Romans, and then also the paths of the different religions that came through that area. And then I've been to Scotland, but it was only like that real quick. I'd love to spend time just kind of walking the castles and stuff like that to really be able to see kind of the old
Yeah.
family history kind of stuff.
I
I guess.
agree. I would love to see the
There's
castles
there's
and
a
do
book
stuff
there's
like
a
that.
book here for that.
Yeah, as you can see, Andy has books behind him. He has a whole library of things going on. All right, so I got 2 questions for you right off the top of the bat.
Okay.
One, have you ever been to Gettysburg? And have you ever looked for do you believe in ghosts and things like that? Have you ever seen that kind of stuff? Because I got to tell you, it freaks me out a little bit, but it's actually very cool. Like that haunted stuff, right?
Oh yeah, if you go, where was I at? I'm trying to remember where, but even up in like where I grew up in the mountains, there's literally old battlefields where
Oh,
Native
yeah.
Americans fought, stuff like that. If you stay camp there or something like that, it's a different feeling. Maybe it's more psychological. You know what happened there, but
And you get,
it just
yes.
feels differently.
I agree 100%. I think that's pretty wild. Like I always wanted to go. I watched some of those shows on like the Travel Channel and some of those things, and there's, it's pretty unique. It's pretty cool. I mean, I think there's that life after death for sure. You see those things. I mean, you can't deny some of those things. I think it's out there. And let me ask you this: who do you think built the pyramids? That's what I'm saying, right? Nobody wants to talk about it, but I don't know. It's a little. That's a tough question.
Well, I think, there's definitely some interesting things on it's like the Sphinx. There's water marks underneath it. It's but again, the climate has changed, and the climate's changing now. So the Earth is constantly moving and changing. So I do definitely think there were some civilizations prior that just kind of faded away. We
I
still
agree.
find civilizations we've totally forgot about. Our
Yep.
species of humankind that no one knows about. So
They actually said that they found, and they know there's a chamber underneath one of the paws, but they won't excavate it or, open it up and check it out and see what's in there and stuff. But there's something there. I mean, I would want to know. Why would you want to go in there and figure out what the hell it is? Right? What's down there? There could be some kind of something that changes history, something that changes the world. I don't know. But pretty cool. That's pretty cool. History stuff is pretty cool. Here you go. Here he is. Andy, what is that?
tell history of Spain.
There you go.
Yeah, see, I like Spain. I've been to Barcelona, but I would love just to backpack, do the Santiago Trail, do all of that. I would be, I could be there for months.
So
I would love to go to Spain.
That's partly home for me as well. So
here we go.
Morbid fascination with that.
Yes.
One of the twists on that story, Grady, which things that presses my buttons, is how those various influences of those various changes in management for these various parts of the world is how that changed the food.
Oh, absolutely.
And that to me is very, very interesting. So Anthony Bourdain in Parts Unknown, his stuff on Spain and areas of Spain on how that food changed during the Arab occupation the way the language changed, the way the science changed, the way the technology changed, the ability to communicate that changed. There was a huge university set up in Tudela in northeastern Spain, which is 30 kilometers down from where my dad's family comes from. It didn't become apparent to me until I made the discovery, the idiot that I am. Go to the Middle East and you hear the call to prayer, and it's like, that's really quite relaxing. And he goes, of course, and Dad's mentioned it to my dad, and he goes, well, of course it is. What do you think happened for nearly 1,000 years? That was always part of the normal day-to-day activity. It's in your DNA. That would resonate, and that would bring up an echo from the past in your DNA. And it wouldn't rub you up the wrong way because it wouldn't be perceived as a threat at the time. And it would just, then you would get reflections back from that within your memories. Very, very strange. And I'm fascinated by all of that and how sort of the artwork changed and that ability to communicate. One I've mentioned before, The Story of Art by E.H. Gombrich, talks about how those transitions changed the way people presented information in visual formats, whether that's architecture or art. And that changed as well as a result of those occupations and those mixing of the minds and communication capabilities. The whole thing's fascinated, but again, it's back to it's people, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is, you follow the old trade routes, you follow from the old the occupations or whatever you want to call it, that went through. It influenced, it changed those cultures there, but it also did an impact. I mean, that's how taking a different angle of different stuff, or, every time a written word or whatever, depending on your mood and depending on who's looking at it at the time, that meaning could be something else. So as you overlay these different pieces, it opens up, it creates a different way of looking at things, different angles of looking at things. It's all about people's experiences on how you look at something. You bring that on a cultural thing and the time period and how they feel. I mean, I like what you said there, because, my family is originally from Scotland. All right. I'm the most comfortable and happy if there's a mountain next to me.
Yeah.
Like, the ocean does nothing for me. All right.
Right.
My wife, on the other hand, is a Spanish. She's Puerto Rico. Her family's from Spain. She has to be close to the ocean, or at least I have to take her every 4 to 6 months. And her whole family's that way. I mean, like, they'll move around, but they'll all end up
Close.
going back to somewhere close by the water. So, I know it's definitely interesting.
So I know you're not a beach guy, but what's your favorite place to visit, like, that has the ocean by it, that you go to a lot?
Where I go to a lot. Where I go to ocean a lot is where I'm forced to by the family, but I'm trying to think where I like to go. You know what I'm talking about. So,
I do.
no, I mean, honestly, as long as there's mountains in the background, like, I've been to Hawaii,
Yep.
and
Oh, yeah.
volcanoes behind me, I'm happy. For some reason, it's like I'm perfectly good.
That grounds
Even
you.
like Costa Rica and like when I was in Spain, I went down to Valencia and all the southern part there, the water. She was happy. I could see the mountains. I could see hills. I'm good.
Yeah. That's
So,
awesome.
A place you would like then, Grady, is further up the coast, so north of Barcelona, up into the Pyrenees. So the eastern end of the Spanish side of the Pyrenees. The last ski resort on the eastern side is an area called the Val de Nuria, or Olot, O-L-O-T, and it's stunning. Summer or winter, either pick one, have any season, just outstanding. They have a funicular railway which climbs up to a monastery at the top, and the ski resort. And in the summer, great walking country. Very, very high resolution maps available for pretty much the whole of the country. But that you'll particularly love because you're literally an hour from the coast, and then an hour from the top of the mountain, top of the Pyrenees.
That's nice. No, I I know my wife's hinted that's probably what we'll end up retiring to as I
There
get
you go.
so
Yeah,
hopefully.
that's awesome. No,
No, I mean
all
think
right.
about it. It's for history, and I could jump on a train and go anywhere in Europe,
Anywhere,
Mm.
anywhere
and
you want to
so
go in Europe. That's awesome. How cool is that? Yeah,
yeah,
I want
and
to go to Europe. I keep telling my wife we got to go to Italy. Couple
oh,
places in Italy. Let's go. I've never been to Italy, so I
We
think we should
you,
definitely do
you
it.
get to start at the bottom of the boot and go all the way up, and do all the different sauces and the different
Yes.
types of stuff. Oh, it's
Oh,
Italy's
I want to do
so
it.
much,
Yeah.
all the history, of
Great,
course, with the
Grady,
celebration.
you might find this one curious. We spoke to Chris Buchek for the podcast we recorded the other day, and he's planning to do the Camino de Santiago with his father, and he's going to follow the Portuguese route from Porto up to Santiago de Compostela next year.
Yeah.
So he's preparing for that at the moment. And that sounds quite an interest. It's one of the shortest routes. It's not the sort of the 130 miles or 170 miles from, I think you can go from Zaragoza in northeast and go across the northern aspect all the way across to Santiago. But that would be mental. You'd need like for
I'll
3
say that's
months to
kind of
do
the
that.
steeper area too, and it from that side.
It's hilly. Yeah, it's bumpy. But the trek up from Porto is about 3 days walk. So it's not a tremendous effort, but
I've always wanted to do that because the history behind that, other than there's they used to be part of that trail used to be an old Celtic druid, some of the walking to the mountain, the water, and stuff like that. No, I've always wanted to do some historical, just to walk, be in the
Yeah.
woods, walking. I'd be a happy camper.
It is.
So
It is cool to walk, and the history behind it. There's so much history, even around us, even in our towns we live in, things that have happened in the past, and the history just around you. People take it for granted. They don't really realize, right?
but
yeah,
people
all
don't.
this stuff.
People, I find that people don't look,
Yeah.
and nor are they interested. I mean, I have 2 girls. We have 2 girls too, and for me, whenever I'm looking after them when we go out, it's like, we haven't been down there. What's down there? What are those people queuing up for? Why are people looking at that? What is that?
Yeah.
And for me, to encourage that curiosity is, this is the world around you. We have a beautiful 14th century church 20 minutes drive from here
I bet you that's beautiful.
that has it's open Church of England church. It's 14th century. They have a cat, a church cat, but the cat will give you a tour around the church. He'll wait at the front gate, and if you come into the church, he will walk in front of you and he will walk you around the site and then walk you
think
back
about
to the gate.
history there and that church. How just that one place is amazing. I would love to visit those places.
That's
I really
that's
would.
500-600 years that thing's been there.
Yeah, that's incredible. Incredible.
That's the crazy thing, is there's so much history around us and stories that need to be told that people don't even pay attention to. I think my wife's tired of me saying, "Why are they remaking that movie?" Because there's so many great stories around us and things that no one has heard from. And I love walking around and just hearing and finding stuff out. There's always so much out there.
Yeah,
So,
no, I agree 100%. So back to work stuff a little bit. What's some of the big things you're working on currently at eSentire? I know you're
well,
working on 50,000 things, but what's one thing that's like, okay, I'm focused on this right now. I got to get a couple things done.
Well, I mean, right now, of course, one of my main focuses is our distribution, our relationship with TD Synex, kind of
Yep.
growing out, kind of really aligning and getting stuff going there. And then at the same time, looking at our cloud relationships and kind of help expand those and kind of build those closer. And then, working closely with other channel partners,
Yeah.
the relationships, just kind of making sure that we're, so right now it's about communications processes and getting, everybody aligned, because we have so many stuff.
moving parts.
Yeah. And we've got things going on and new. It's kind of like we just talked about history. There's a lot of things that we do that we might have mentioned or people don't realize that we can do, that
Right.
we've got to go back and re-educate. We've
Yeah.
got to also, the same thing with partners. We got to go back to our partners. There might be something that they're doing that might help our clients out. We
Yeah.
just got to have that communication going.
Yeah.
So.
No, I agree.
Well,
So-
this becomes, for us, I mean, again, we talk about this, we're here with the podcast, is this becomes they're part of our community.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not just the customers, but it's the partners too. It's the distribution networks as well. They're all functionally part of the same community. We all support each other.
Yeah.
What sort of efforts are you thinking then, Grady, to sort of grow out that community or water and feed that community?
Well, I mean, that's kind of like I said, it's kind of go back to making sure that all that we're offering is a dotted line to our partners on, how can we help our end client leverage what we have and what also is there that we can easily create that ecosystem, leveraging some of our cloud relationships and some of the other AI security relationships within and pull them into the ecosystem, like a real ecosystem, like really build out those bridges and build out those tie-ins to
Mm.
really be able to offer that. Because I was, at RSA, everybody was talking about AI, everybody was talking about this or that. And we've been around for over 20 years. We've been using AI, machine learning. I've touched on deep learning. We have a lot of this stuff here, a lot of the core pieces there that we should be, leveraging, but also tying in our other parts of the ecosystem. So I think that's one of my big focuses is kind of everything I'm doing in distribution is affected by ecosystem, and everything in the ecosystem affects the distribution because everybody's tied to
Tied
distribution.
together. Yeah.
The channels, the partners, it's all tied together.
Yeah. No, I agree. You're right. It is. It's
I
all
I hope
tied
I didn't
together.
sound too much like a politician there. I went
No, no,
around.
no. All right. Let me ask you this. If you had a time machine and you were able to go back 10, 15 years, what would you tell your younger self? Would you tell yourself to do anything different? Or would you say,
Oh,
hey, this is what you should focus on or just stay with the course?
I'd probably stay with the course. The only thing I'd probably say, I had an offer way back to jump over to Google when Google was starting up, and my wife did go to the West Coast, and I said no. So that's probably
Yeah.
the only one I could think of. But no,
Yeah.
I
You're
took
like,
like
damn, I
a
should
nice
have did that.
employee or something over there.
Yeah.
But other than that, no, I mean I've had a good journey. I've always tell
Yeah.
people, I've been very lucky. I've been, I enjoy what I do. I like talking with people. I like pulling things together. I love connecting the dot on kind of how relationships or even, just like there's a couple of partners we're working with now. I knew them way back. I helped them build their business plan. And
Yeah.
I like doing that. I like bringing things together. Um, nah, I mean, other than, I wouldn't have as many dogs at my house. That's probably
Yeah.
the one thing I would change for
I hear
sure.
you.
But
I'm
other than
with you
that, I'm
there.
pretty good. I'm happy.
Yeah,
So
I agree. I don't think I would really change. The only thing I would do is tell my younger self that you should definitely check out the crypto stuff that's coming out. Even though it sounds crazy, check it out because it's gonna
yeah,
blow up.
yeah,
Do
yeah.
that.
There's a couple
So
of stunts I wouldn't have done either. Jumped
yeah,
out of
right.
planes. But other than that,
Exactly. So I got one more question for you. Would it be okay? And I know you're super busy, and first of all, I know you're traveling right now, and we do appreciate you taking the time today, chatting with us and hanging out. But would it be okay if 6 months, 9 months from now, you come back on, give us an update where you're at, what's going on, where we are at eSentire? And I know you and I are gonna be working closely together doing stuff, and which is also going to affect what we're doing over in on your side of the world, my friend Andy. So with partners and things like that. So yeah, if you would be able to come back on and give us an update, 6, 9 months from now, let us know where things are going, what's happening, anything new in your life. Um, that would be great if that would be possible.
oh, definitely. I look forward to it to kind of check in, see where we're at, and hopefully have some good some recaps and lessons learned even.
Yes. See, exactly. Lessons learned. Well, awesome. Well, thank you again, my friend, for taking the time. I know it's not easy, jumping on here and doing stuff and out of the busy day. And I know you said you get up super early, like me. I get up early and I start my day, and there's 50,000 things already going on, and it's only whatever time it is here, 8:30 or 9 o'clock almost. But thank you for letting us. Spend time with you today and go and everything and let people know who you are. But thank you again. Really appreciate it. And thank you for wanting to come back on
No,
onto our little
yeah,
show.
I appreciate the conversation. So it's good.
Awesome.
Excellent. Well, Grady, once again, thank you. This has been another episode of the Cyberculture Cafe series, part of the Cyber Talks podcast, presented by eSentire, the authority in managed detection and response. To learn how eSentire's next level MDR service can help you strengthen your program and build cyber resilience, please visit eSentire.com. Grady, absolute pleasure, and thank you for taking the time today to talk to us. We look forward to the next episode and having you back on in the fullness of time to listen to the latest innovations.